Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We are so excited. We've got a special guest here today with us. Jamie and I are thrilled to have brought this registered dietitian to you who we have met. And I'll let her tell about where we met, but we're just really excited to have a friend of ours here on a personal and social and business level. So, hi, Jamie. How are you doing?
I'm good, Paige. Good to see you always. Um, a real food recovery, a lot of what our episodes are focused on is Paige and I give a lot of wisdom and real world experience. But as experienced as Paige and I are, and we always say we've got 100 years of recovery, of addiction and recovery experience between us, and we do. But for us, it is an absolute treat and an honor to work with and interview people like Sally Johnson, who we learn from all the time, but more specifically, we want to bring her wisdom, her knowledge and experience to our listeners and viewers because Sally's got a very unique story about, how she pivoted to kind of figure out the best path for her to be able to teach the truth of health and nutrition and moving away from processed foods, to teach the truth of what processed foods do to us outside of this paradigm that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and here in the United States, what they espouse, which is all about the processed food agendas and the big pharma and big food agendas. So Sally has done a really beautiful job of pivoting and creating a career for herself that is very authentic. And that's what we really want to talk to her about today. So Sally, welcome. Glad you're here in Real Food Recovery.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction. And it's a true honor to be here with the two of you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
So Sally, who are you? What do you do? And how did you get into the world of dietetics and nutrition?
Great questions to start with. I've been a registered dietitian for about 30 years already.
Oh,
So
wow.
I can't believe it. Time does fly. I got my RD back in about 1992. And I did so because I was really obsessed with food. At the time, I had no idea of what food addiction was, that you could be addicted to food. And that's kind of what food obsession was sort of masking itself as. I was trying to figure out why I had such an awful relationship with food. So I thought I'll become a registered dietitian and then I'll know everything. And then I'll be able to help everybody else because I could see around me, everyone was suffering, men, women, everybody. So I become an RD. And of course, it's all the conventional teachings and learnings. And I'm working in clinical and I'm working in community settings. And all the while, I'm getting kind of sicker and sicker and sicker. And I'm not in control of my eating at all. And I'm still food obsessed and I'm still full of cravings. And I'm kind of hiding it from the world because now I'm a food professional. I'm supposed to have my act together. So
What do you mean sicker and sicker and sicker, Sally? Can you say?
Oh, great. I was developing chronic conditions and I could not control my weight. My weight was slowly going up, 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 up. And I was sick all the time. I had, to name a few, I had IBS, GERD. I was starting to have periodontitis. I had a little bit of arthritis. I had stomach viruses constantly.
Interesting.
I had chronic fungal infections. And I felt terrible and I was gaining weight and I had no energy and I couldn't think. I had horrendous brain fog.
Brain fog, yeah.
I didn't know how people did anything in the world. I was like, I can't think. How did people achieve anything? How are they thinking? How are they doing it? And my clients weren't doing so well either. In the hospital setting, it's different. But when I was working in the world of community nutrition, clients were frustrated. I was teaching them these programs using conventional nutrition guidelines, and they weren't achieving their goals at all. And they were frustrated, and I was frustrated. So 20 so years after I got my RD, I kind of left the field. I was like, I'm done. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I had no idea. I
Can I
still,
ask you, were you on processed food all this time?
yes, yes. Processed food, the kind that masquerades as healthy food. Like I didn't,
Okay.
oh yeah, yeah.
We can use food names and examples here, Sally. So what was it a typical meal like for you back then?
It was all grains. It was grains for breakfast, oatmeal and kind of stuff for breakfast. And then I ate bread and all, it was extremely carb heavy, extremely grain heavy.
Gotcha.
And I was always craving like dairy and bread and dairy. And of course the confections, the sugar, I had kids, we were all eating sugar every day. And I would just like pretend I wasn't. It was just terrible, but I craved it and I couldn't seem to stop. Or I would tell myself, I'm not going to have any today. And then the kids would have something and I would have to have it.
Right.
And then I'm hiding it from everyone because I don't want people to see. I don't want the kids to see me eating it. I don't want my husband to see me eating it, but it was
So
just,
hard
I
for
remained a
moms.
mess. I hadn't fixed myself in this world, this conventional world.
Mhm.
So I stopped practicing and leave it all behind and start wondering what to do with my life. And 10 years ago, so this is after 20 years, I discovered ancestral health. I discovered paleo nutrition, and I discovered CrossFit, which is functional fitness. And I put the two together and because I had met some women who were doing it and they were everything I wanted to be. They were happy, vibrant, strong, lean. And I was like, that's it. I want to be that. That's what I want to be. So I started doing what they were doing and it worked for me. It worked for me. And, I'm talking about the paleo diet here, but what the paleo diet was an elimination diet of all processed foods. I had to cut out all the bread I was eating. I had to cut out the grains. I had to cut out the sugar. I had to cut candy, all of it. I had to cut it all out and get back to basics, veggies, and in my case, animal protein. And it worked great. I healed. Everything went away. IBS went away. GERD went away. I had no more gingivitis. My dentist was shocked. I went 3 months later after I started and she sat back in the chair and I'd been going to her like every 4 months for a deep clean. That's how bad it was. She said, what'd you do? What? She was just dumbfounded. I said, I stopped eating all that stuff. I stopped eating all those grains and the sticky carbs. And she's like, there's no gingivitis. You're healed. I was like, yeah, baby. It happened that quickly. And I got off, I was on meds from the GERD, max doses of medication, got completely off it. So it was the processed food. So that was 10 years ago. And I worked as a consultant and for Paleo Plan and Paleo Hacks. I wrote 3 books on paleo diet and nutrition in that time. And then I heard a few podcasts about food addiction. I heard Joe Niflin speaking on some podcasts and I thought it was like a giant aha moment.
Sure.
That's what I did.
What do you mean?
I
Can you say more?
recovered from my food addiction by abstaining from processed foods.
Got
That's
you had not put that together yet.
No.
No.
See, most people that's what I have, but Sally, that's what I did. That's how I healed.
That's
what I
phenomenal.
did.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's the abstaining that did it. And I thought back to times over the past 10 years when I sort of lost my way in paleo, and it was because I had started eating the crap again. And I was like, oh, okay, that was actually a lapse. And then when I went, but I had not put it because the concept had not been introduced to me. I had not heard the 2 words even together. Processed food, 3 words, processed food addiction.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's also why I used to do 30-day paleo challenges all the time and people would do great on them and feel amazing. And then day 31 comes and guess what happens?
Yeah.
So now I understood that it's not a 30-day challenge. It's a lifestyle. And I've always said this is a lifestyle change, but I know why now people couldn't stay on it or wouldn't stay on it because they were just lapsing right back into old addictive habits.
Right.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. So you've written some books, you've contributed to others. How do you work with clients? Do you work with clients or
Mhm.
how do you work with the, the general populations out there, either of people who don't know that food addiction is a thing, or are coming to you to learn how to remove the processed foods?
Mhm. Well, I do consulting work with the Addiction Reset community, which is a food addiction recovery group,
Mhm.
it's Joan Iflin's group. But I also, on my own, when I have clients, I always educate on food addiction. I give the history of how the food industry has influenced us
That's right.
and how it's likely we do have food addiction. And I always work it in. I work it in. And I'm actually trying now to put it at the front of my practice, but it's a hard sell. People are not convinced yet. I think they will be. I think
Well,
it's happening, but
yeah, I think the tide is starting to turn. I think, and that's, we say this all the time, Paige and I, we are food plan neutral here. But we are processed food free. So the
Yeah.
fact that, we welcome folks who come in, whether they're professionals like you, like we're talking to you today, next week, Paige and I are talking to an epidemiologist who is plant-based. So for us,
Mhm.
it's not so much about the food plan, because
Yeah.
our food plans might change over time, right? As
Mhm.
we age, our food plans might change. Paige and I talk about that often.
Mhm.
But what we are not going to mince words on, what we won't allow, is the talk of how processed foods can fit into a life that is vibrant and recovering and joy filled and aware. There just isn't the place for the standard American foods and the processed food industry.
Yeah.
So Sally, were you saying that you have a hard time when you're working with clients convincing them that there is such a thing as processed food addiction?
Yeah, I feel like I have to do a spiel.
And
People
so
have not heard of it, or if they have, they're very resistant to the idea.
Okay.
Very
so
resistant.
what do you tell people and how do you explain it to them so that they can understand this is a real thing? This is a great topic to talk about.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I go into the history of how the food industry s- was bought up, started way back in the 1960s. The tobacco industry started buying up the processed food industry, and they were in cahoots. And sugar industry was in cahoots with other processed food and with tobacco industries. But by the 1980s, the tobacco industry was buying up huge food conglomerates. Um, I was just looking at this. Yes, Philip Morris acquired Kraft and General Foods in the 1980s, and
Mhm.
J.R. Reynolds bought Nabisco in the 1980s. And
Mhm.
it's just snowballed since then.
Right.
And the tobacco industry has applied its addiction business model to processed foods over the last 40 years.
Mhm.
So this is what I educate them on. 5 A's of addiction: availability, affordability, advertising, advertising to a young age group.
Mhm.
And what's the one I didn't say?
Mm,
Availability, affordability, advertising, young age, addictive product formulation, and
Mhm.
addictive product.
oh, yeah.
Those are the 5 A's of
Yep.
addiction. That's the addiction business model. That's what the tobacco industry has implemented through the processed food industry. And it's created cravings.
They did. They literally created it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah.
do you think once you explain that to people that they go, "Oh, okay, I get it now," or do you
Their
think it's
eyes
a
are as wide
message?
as saucers. Their eyes are as wide as saucers.
Mhm.
It's convincing. And then you can also you can give people a self quiz. You can see I give a self quiz. I can say, here, answer these questions. And if you get, more than 3 are a yes, then you might have a mild addiction. And if you get more than this amount, you're moderate addiction or severe addiction. Because it's not, processed food addiction is not one thing. It's different in everybody, and it can run from mild to severe.
Right.
Mhm. I love that you brought that point out that we do not have all the same. I mean, my husband can have a box of cookies in his cupboard for months till they
Mhm.
expire.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
disgusting. It makes me so mad.
Mhm.
And I don't go in that cupboard unless I'm jonesing for trouble. But so, I mean, he does have to watch his weight, but he doesn't like he can have a cookie or two every evening. He'll do that every evening.
Mhm.
It's annoying,
Yeah.
But that's an example of something I could never do, because for me, one cookie could never be enough, and 1,000, wait, did I say that backwards?
Yes. No, you didn't.
No, you said it right.
One cookie is
1,000.
never enough, and 1,000 isn't enough.
Oh, no, one cookie's too much. and
Yes,
1,000
thank you,
never enough.
thank you. I
Oh,
knew there was
okay, okay.
something.
I thought you had said it right.
Help me. But all right, is that saying not true?
Oh, yes.
I mean, they're just, I could not have one bite would be too much, and
Mhm.
1,000 wouldn't be enough. And what's so interesting, Sally's bringing up that point of cravings that the tobacco industry created. I mean, what happens in the brain whenever it's almost like an aura comes over you with one bite? We know this is a disease of cues and triggers, right? Whether you're taking a bite or your mouth starts salivating, you get that Pavlovian response from a smell, a sight, a sound. You can hear a candy bar wrapper crumpling, and
Mhm.
you can start that dopamine starts dripping in the brain. So
Mm.
it's interesting how they literally created that through the use of cellophane, through
Mhm.
the use of smells, through the
Mhm.
visual,
Yes.
Mhm.
um, and they've got you.
Mhm.
And so the question becomes, Sally, what do you do for those people then?
Oh, well, you definitely have to look at whatever the food plan is, whatever
Mhm.
the client likes eating, wants to eat, and where the processed foods are, what is causing the cravings, when the cravings come, what are the behaviors when the cravings are there, and work on that. But then you also have to do some mindset work, some cognitive restoration. You have to learn tools and techniques to stop cravings in their tracks before you have that one bite.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
food addiction also, it isn't only eating 1,000 cookies when you have one. Food addiction
Mhm.
is also having to have 2 cookies every day at this time, and then this food at this time, and this food because I'm stressed because my child did this. I must go eat this food.
Mhm.
It's whenever we're using food other than for hunger,
Right.
we're using it as a drug. We're food users rather than
Yes.
like a
Right.
drug user, right? So whatever the behavior is. So I learned to bring awareness around that and develop techniques to overcome that, to respond to stressors rather than react in the food to them, breaking cycles.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I love that you bring that up about helping people develop tools. And that's plural, right? Because that
Yes.
means there's more than one,
That's right.
and not everybody responds to the same tool, right? So
Right.
what is effective for me may not be effective for you. And so we just keep going through the toolbox. We just build up our tool belt till it's heavier and heavier. And how do we build up the tool belt? We keep trying new things till we see
Exactly.
what lands
Mhm.
well. I make a funny, it's like Goldilocks. She just keeps trying each bed till she finds out which one is just right. And so that's how it is. Same with addiction, don't you think?
Mhm.
Yes, I do. I do.
So
It's, food addiction is very different than other addictions. We don't have to
artist.
drink. We don't have to
Right.
take drugs. We have to eat though, and we have to work with food and deal with food and cook with food to eat. So it's like we're alcoholics living in the liquor store. Like we
Mhm.
have to
Right.
learn
Absolutely.
how to deal with the toxic food environment and an
Brilliant.
environment that we're just mismatched.
Bombarded. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. And you know what? The marketers know that as well.
they are
And they're doing a
highly
fine,
aware.
yeah, they are very successful at their jobs.
That's right.
They do a really, they're monetarily very successful. The irony is they sell you, all these addictive foods, and then we've got the diet industry over here making a boatload of money too,
Mhm.
trying to reverse the effects that, and going about it in a backwards way.
Yeah.
So the diet industry knows going into it, you're not going to be successful. So they hope to keep you around longer.
Let's talk about that, because the diet industry, as Paige is referring to, are the folks that are coming in with programs or plans or solutions to the problem of weight and obesity. But a lot of what people don't know, and Sally, you probably have an insider track to this more than we do, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which sets the curriculum and sets the continuing education requirements for all registered dietitians and nutritionists that are in the healthcare, as clinicians in healthcare industry, as clinicians. You have some requirements, not only to get certified, but to stay certified.
Right.
And the folks that are writing the curriculum for you, the people that are creating the programs and giving you the education that you're supposed to give to your clients are actually, they are underwritten by, funded by, researched by, supported by, lobbied for by the academy, the big food industry, right?
Right.
The processed food
Exactly.
industry itself is
Exactly.
actually behind the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics.
That's exactly right. But where you thought you made a mistake, you were actually also correct, because members of the American and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, they always call it by its old name. The folks that are lobbying for on the committee that sets USDA guidelines and does the lobbying, many of them are members of A&D.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a closed circle.
Right.
You have the A&D members and leadership tightly intertwined with big food and big pharma,
Absolutely.
who are all lobbying and on committees, creating the USDA dietary guidelines, which come out every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's taught, and then it's lobbied for, and then the money just goes round and round and round.
Mm-hmm.
The A&D has sponsors. Okay, it's a private company, so they don't have to reveal everything, but it's been well known and controversial for forever, their ties to big food and big pharma and how that might influence their positions, because the A&D writes position papers, and as you said, that's curriculum, like literally curriculum that I have to adhere to every 5 years to be recertified as an RD. Anyway, so I knew this long ago. All you had to do 20, 30 years ago was open up the journal, the journal that the A&D puts out. And right there, front page, first page is like an ad for Coke or Pepsi or something.
Oh my
Wow.
It was
gosh.
just in your face, it was in your face. So
Wow.
yeah, but still nothing really happened. And then in 2022, a whole expose happened, and A&D's ties to the industry was called out, and they just were being funded by Pepsi, by Coke, by Hershey's, by Nestle, by the Sugar Association,
General Mills,
General Mills, all of it. And they not all of that is on their webpage, so they don't. Since all that, they have severed ties with Pepsi, Coke, and Hershey's apparently, but in the case, I believe, of Hershey's, they're still funded by trade organizations that represent all of these companies. So it's indirect now. Like the funding is still coming from all these companies, but it's just more indirect.
Exactly. Yeah.
To the tune of millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. So yeah. And I mean, right there on their sponsorship page, they say they're sponsored by a group called Tate and Lyle. That Tate and Lyle is one of the world's largest producers of high fructose corn syrup.
Exactly.
Oh gosh.
And this is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, high fructose corn syrup. So I'm not a member. I dropped my membership way back in the day. I've had to actually reinstate it when I've had clinical jobs that force you to be a member. So, but then I immediately drop it again when I don't have to. And that's separate from the credentialing agency. I maintain my credentials. I'm licensed in the state of Texas, but I don't have to pay the A&D. They're getting paid enough. They don't need me.
Exactly.
And they don't represent me in that way. They don't.
Do they recognize processed food addiction at all, or where do they stand on it, or do they just avoid it? Or
yeah, there is no position paper on that at this time. I bet there will be. But I bet right now it's most RDs that I know, they're still being taught all foods are okay, eat in moderation. There's no bad foods, all that
Oh,
stuff,
man.
and no, food addiction is not. It's not a diagnosis, so it's not a thing. What I read once, not lately, I did read once, the A&D addressed all of the different diets out there and what should you do as an RD. And they basically did say, just do what you want to do, just back it up, have your research, and, just be able to support what you're doing. So they did, I don't know if that was an official position or unofficial, whatever it was, but they did say that because they do recognize that there's a whole bunch of different
Mm-hmm.
meal
Right.
plans, food philosophies out there. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Do,
so.
do you know how they keep up with their latest research on nutrition?
Well, it's all, it seems to be all of very conventional stuff.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So does this link to when I was growing up, it was the food pyramid, and then
Mm-hmm.
it became my plate. When it shifted from the low fat craze to the making sure your macros were sort of in line. You were getting enough protein and limiting your starches and making sure you were getting more fruits and vegetables. Then it went to something called the food compass. Tell us about that,
Mhm.
what that is,
Yeah.
and how prevalent is it? And is this a useful tool for a healthy life?
Right. So here's, the food compass got a lot of attention. It went kind of viral recently, and it's not a replacement for my plate or the old food pyramid. It's not.
Right.
It's not. It was funded by government agencies. It was funded by the NIH and the National Heart, Lung, Blood, and the NHLBI Institute. Yeah,
Got it.
Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute and the NIH, but it's not a replacement for the food pyramid.
Okay.
It is meant, though, to be hugely influential. It's meant to be used to inform consumers about choices.
Mhm.
It's meant to help the industry formulate products.
Mhm.
It's meant for investors. It's meant for policymaking, programming, and this is a quote: marketing to children. It's meant for all that. So what's the problem with it? The problem is that it was not only funded by NIH and I have to look at this, NHLBI, but also Danone Group, DANONE,
Yeah.
one of the 4 largest food industries in the world.
Yeah.
So it's industry funded, government funded. It was done by Tufts University,
Yes.
and the dean of the School of Nutrition was the lead author on the study. Tufts is hugely funded by big food and pharma.
Mhm.
And the dean also works very, very closely with these industries out in the
Mhm.
world. He's doing more policy than anything else these days, is what I read. So this study does really favor processed foods over unprocessed foods. The Compass
Absolutely.
rates them higher. And so a score of 100 is the best food. A score of 1 is the worst food. Cheerios has a score of 95. Okay. Honey Nut Cheerios has a score of 76. Reese's Puffs has a score of 71. Now, whole milk has a score of 49. Ground beef has a score of 26. Cheddar cheese has a score of 28. So you have like 3 dozen sugary cereals, grain sugary cereals, with higher scores than Whole Foods, than plain old dairy and meat and eggs.
Yeah, what didn't they come out and say that Lucky Charms was healthier than
Yeah, Lucky Charms has a
egg?
score of 60. And
Oh,
grilled chicken fillet has a score of 50. Lucky Charms.
so who's in charge here? Who's in charge?
Exactly.
There's no adults in the room.
No. So it says that the Tufts Food Compass gave frosted mini wheats
Mhm,
in 87.
mhm.
Great Grains double pecan whole grain cereal, which sounds horrible, 84.
Yeah.
Banana Nut Crunch 81. That's frightening. And then like to your point, Paige, you've got things on the bottom which are, milk is only a few points higher than a Cinnabon,
Oh, wow.
Exactly.
which is only a couple points lower than a chicken fillet.
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's
Yeah.
insane to me. So you're saying to me that Honey Smacks cereal is a healthier choice than a
Chicken breast.
chicken,
According
than a
to the
piece
food
of,
compass.
and,
Mhm.
and now I'm not even talking about animal protein versus plant protein. I'm just talking about a whole food versus a processed food.
Exactly.
It's insane.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what do we do? How does this change? Do you see it changing? I mean,
No, I don't. I think there's way too much
money.
extreme money going into, all of these institutions are supported by industry money, the nutrition schools, the medical schools, the researchers, all of it. Pharma supports hospitals. It's all one big money exchange. And it so I the only way to do anything is from the ground up. Like consumers have to want not to eat this food all day long.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's crazy.
It really is. And what I'm looking at this is, the lower the score, right? That they want you to avoid it. So and again, it's so interesting to me that you've got the rankings the way you do. And more importantly, that it's almost confusing, right? It's almost counterintuitive the way they've structured it.
Right.
And
And yeah, I'm going to interrupt you because I want to your point. I believe all fruits and vegetables pretty much get a score of 100, but to have these cereals
Okay,
up
good.
there in the high 90s, right
Oh,
under
yeah.
fruits and vegetables,
Who's
Right.
gonna,
edible
what do
foods,
they know what they're doing? Who's gonna choose if you're gonna choose a stalk of broccoli
right,
versus Honey Smacks? Like what kids
right,
would be like,
right,
well,
right, yeah.
what kid's gonna
Well,
do
the
it?
compass said.
Or what adult, unfortunately,
And
exactly.
what's so interesting is you will hear the medical community say that our diet is going to bankrupt our country. So this is pushing us into bankruptcy if we want to talk about money and
Mhm.
all the health ailments that are coming from these processed food. We are
Mhm.
going to bankrupt ourselves.
But the industry loves it because it's a sick care cycle, give people junk, make them sick, they go to the hospital, they get drugs, make people sick, they go to the hospital, they get
Well,
drugs.
and
It's a big cycle. It's a big sick care cycle.
I'm
Not
in I'm in the industry, right? I'm in the healthcare industry, and I'm not a clinician, but they are, many of my best friends and colleagues are clinicians, and it makes us all sad because
They're
everyone
stuck.
that
They're stuck.
they're exactly, and they get into, I don't know one person in the healthcare field, and Paige, you've got your RN. We've got people in the healthcare industry that got in with the best of intentions to
I
actually
would
Right.
say
help
99% of them.
to
I
heal
agree.
people because they had something pivotal in their lives that, usually from their past, that they want to give back or pay it forward. And they come in with this strong desire to help or heal, and usually a beautiful story attached to it. And then they're taught to manage sickness, to manage disease. And I, in the healthcare industry, and I love my company and I love the work that I get to do with them. But I believe that we have, all of us in healthcare have a responsibility to rewrite this narrative, at least in educating our patients and letting them make the choice. But I've heard way too many doctors and clinicians, way too many practitioners tell me, Jamie, I'll talk to my patients all day long about it, but they're not going to listen. So why bother?
No,
Yeah.
Don't make that choice for them.
Right.
I
Don't
wish I
make
could
that choice
say,
now.
yeah, I
Don't make
wish
that
I could say education was the answer,
It's not.
but it's not. We've got to address the addiction because you tell, I mean, an addict can understand. I mean, look, addicts don't want to be where they are either. They just can't figure out how to get out of it. Even though they
Yeah.
use willpower for a couple days, they'll try and then that fails. So the system isn't working here.
That's right.
So we need more than education to help people out of the dark.
Mhm.
And so that's where it comes with teaching them tools.
Exactly.
Putting legislation on processed food uh, products out there. I mean,
Mhm.
education is still part of it, but we've
Ending the
got to,
subsidies and like I was listening to an author talk about, this is a well-known author, and he's been out there in this world of of whole food education. Let's just call it that. He's been in this world, and he had the opportunity to be um the Surgeon General, and he turned it
Mm,
down because he said there's so much glad handing happening between the industry and the government. I
Yeah.
I I can't do it. I can't in
Okay.
good conscience take the Surgeon General post.
mhm,
Didn't want
I
to
know
compromise.
that I'm not going to be able to affect change.
Yeah,
mhm.
that's where we're at. I do think it would help if doctors would start telling patients, to not eat as many ultra processed foods. And if they didn't know what that was, if we had more dietitians doing this, then you can refer them to dietitians and all the things, whatever.
Mhm.
Patients do tend to listen to their doctors. They don't always follow through, but they
It's a
feel the doctor
starting
knows what
place.
they're talking about. So they
Mhm.
aspire to follow a doctor's recommendation.
Sally, last question. You're right, by the way. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I had a question. I worked with a practitioner who was in the field with you, and she told patients that she would show them a picture of a table, and it was set very, very nicely, and it had like candles and the whole thing, and she's like, make your dining experience a really memorable experience, make it a ritual, make it, and I liked all that. And then of course she went into the mindful eating thing, which is like telling, for those of us in food addiction, or some range of food addiction, it's like telling a cocaine addict to put the Coke spoon down in between snorts. It's like, it's insane, right?
Yeah.
To even
Yeah.
think that that was going to be possible.
Right.
And but the fact that this person was telling patients, hey, not only make it a ritual, but be mindful while you're eating these addictive foods that I'm giving you recipes for. Where do you land on this whole mindful nutrition movement, mindful eating movement?
Yeah. Well, mindfulness of it's part of the solution. Yes,
Yes, mindfulness is part of the solution.
part of
Right.
it, part of it. You need to be mindful enough to know how to apply your tools and techniques that will get you through
Right.
cravings. Yeah. And yeah, it's part of the solution. It's part of the brain restoration that you have to do to move yourself away from addiction, to
Right.
shut the addiction down and turn on your logical thinking again. That's more in control.
Is it possible to mindfully eat processed foods? Like,
As mindfully processed foods,
right.
it depends on the severity of your addiction.
Okay.
For
point.
most of the people,
Yeah.
no, it won't. It
Right.
turns it right back on. My
Yeah.
mom, I'm gonna tell you a mom story. My mom, she ate chocolate every day, and she was definitely addicted to chocolate. And she would tell me, Sally, if I don't eat chocolate for like a month or two, I don't crave it. The cravings go away. I don't want it. She goes, as soon as I start eating it again, I have to have it every.
Hmm.
So even she knew without knowing that she was addicted to chocolate. And then when
Right.
she was abstinent, her brain, because we have plasticity, our brains can change. Her
Right.
brain would change. She'd be off eating it. And as soon as she had it again, boom, the addiction was
There it
reignited.
was.
So yeah, so can you mind? She could not mindfully eat chocolate. She had to have it, every day when she had it. So
Yeah.
no, you probably can't.
Don't you think a part of the solution too would be preventative medicine if there was more emphasis on preventative healthcare? What does a healthy day look like? But nobody's
Yes.
spending money
The
on.
insurance companies aren't spending money on that, right?
Well, that's
They
kind of
get
what I also meant by sick care. Like we wait till we're really sick.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
then instead of going to the root cause, like I
yeah,
do in functional medicine, they just
hmm
band-aid it, give you drugs, and
yeah,
don't change everything. So you get sicker, so you go back.
hmm
So yeah,
hmm
Right.
of course I wish. What is preventive medicine? It's just living a healthy life. It's like living a healthy life.
Well, it'd be education, explaining people what single ingredient foods are, exercising, sleeping, stress management, spirituality,
Right.
whatever that looks like.
Circadian
And
rhythm,
yeah,
getting
all
sun.
that.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
there
Yeah.
was, if this was a country that had high focus on that, it would, the hospital beds would be empty.
Paige, wouldn't
Yeah.
that be great if we had a real food recovery 16-week course that covered all of that?
I
Huh.
think we should do that.
I think we should do that. I think we should do that. Stay tuned, guys, for big announcement. All right. On future episode, I promise. So we've got some listener questions. We've got a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure, Sally, we honor your time. So thank you for your time today.
Yeah.
Our first listener question comes in. I hear so much conflicting information about protein. I don't even know where to start. What's your stance on protein?
Oh, so I love this question. Protein is the highest satiety macronutrients being fat, carbs, and protein. It's very satisfying. Whether you're getting it from plant foods, higher protein plant foods, or combination plant foods, or you're getting it from animal foods, it's very satiating. And there's different reasons why. But I think a main reason is that protein or amino acids, which is what protein is, they are involved in the formation of calming neurotransmitters that are calming. So you eat protein and you feel good and calm. That's part of the reason that they're so satiating. Another reason, there's a theory out there, it's called the protein leverage hypothesis, that we need protein. Whether it's from plant or animals, we need enough protein for body processes, for recovery, for our bones, tendons, skin, ligaments, muscles, all of it, everything. And if you don't get enough, you will stay hungry until you eat enough of all the other little foods to get all the amino acids your body requires.
Right.
So we need to eat enough protein so that we're not so hungry, so that we're making the right neurotransmitters, and so that we are not food seeking to meet that need that our physiology requires.
Right.
Yeah. So how much protein do you need? Well, the RDA, 0.8 grams per kilogram, is widely recognized now as being too low. It's the minimum amount you need not to be sick.
Right.
And it was based on a very healthy population of young men.
Oh,
So what do we need? It's generally recognized now, and this is unofficial, but it's all over the literature now, that you need about between 1.6 and 2.2 grams per kilogram. That is about 1 gram per pound of your ideal or desired body weight. Yeah. So.
And doesn't protein, isn't it the hardest macronutrient for the stomach to break down so it stays in the stomach longer? Is that true? Or does that fat take longer to break down and stay in the stomach longer? I thought
I don't know. I'm not sure. That might be a factor.
I thought that was one reason that protein was the most
Yeah, it's,
satiating, is because it takes the longest to break down.
It has a
Well, yeah.
thermogenesis of food, higher thermogenesis of food.
Right. And maybe that's involved too.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got one more. I'm considering working with a dietitian. What can working with someone like you do for me?
So I think working with a nutritional professional is a great thing for folks. I mean, we have mass confusion out there, right?
Yes.
And
yes, we do.
It's mass confusion. And on the part of the food industry, they love that confusion because it keeps us all just giving up.
That's right. They're selling it. They're manufacturing it.
Exactly. So finding a dietitian that's in alignment with your food philosophy and your food values, and who is, experienced in a meal plan that you're interested in, can help you zero in on exactly what you need to do to achieve your specific goals. And it's different for everyone. So, if you're interested in weight loss and food addiction, someone like me is great. And someone like you guys are great. And if you're interested in something else, you just find a professional who has experience that way. But but the professional can guide you. You're accountable to them. If they're compassionate,
Exactly.
you have someone really on your side, working closely with you, helping you with exactly what you need to achieve, again, who helps you identify your goals and then can help.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you work with people, are you food plan neutral as well, Sally, when you work with people, so to speak?
Totally.
If they come to you with, as long as you try to steer them away from the addictive foods and more towards the clean, unprocessed.
Absolutely.
That's
I
great.
just want people off the sugary crap.
Yeah.
And the processed food. Yeah.
Yeah.
Processed food, ultra processed food.
Just make sure when you're hiring a dietitian, you find out if they're aware about processed food addiction. You want to make sure
Absolutely.
that they are aware of that.
Are
Sally,
they in the paradigm, right? The A&D paradigm.
That they're aware of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sally, before we go, I want to make sure you have a chance to brag on yourself about where people can find you and about your books you've written, where they can find those and what the title is.
Oh yeah, thanks. Gosh, sometimes I can't even remember the titles of the books. I'm gonna have all three right here. If you go on Amazon and you look up Sally Johnson, 3 paleo cookbooks and nutrition books will pop up. Those are me. Those are me.
I've read them. They're good.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of good, easy recipes.
Yeah,
yeah.
very.
And people can find me on Instagram at Sally Johnson RD, and on Twitter, it's same thing, at Sally Johnson RD. Please DM me, ask me any questions. I'm happy to chat and to help. Yeah.
And you're on Facebook as well.
I'm on Facebook as well. I have to get a little more active there, but that again is, I believe that's also Sally Johnson, Registered Dietitian.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Mhm. Yeah. And I will tell you
Got it.
that I've tried several of her recipes and they are great. I really appreciate Sally's genius in the kitchen.
Perfect.
I'm
Thank you.
gonna shoot that right back at you, Paige. I really
Thank
appreciate.
you.
Yes.
Everyone who's watching this podcast knows Paige is the most awesome in the kitchen.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This has been a privilege. I hope that you'll come back and visit us again sometime.
I think there's
Yes.
lots more we can talk about. I would love to. So thank
Yes.
you. I really
Great.
appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Sally. See you
Thanks,
all
guys.
again on another episode of Real Food Recovery, and we'll look forward to having Sally back soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye
See
for
you.
now.